Let me tell you about Zara Keth'lynn, though honestly most folks just called her that refugee problem. And believe me, after bouncing between 17 different species across 43 worlds, she was starting to think that was her actual name. Right now she was crammed into cargo hold C of the Refugee freighter profitable venture, which was about as comfortable as it sounds. The Refugees had the personality of wet cardboard and the hospitality to match. Captain Grex had made it crystal clear that she was cargo, not a passenger, and cargo didn't get seats, meals, or basic dignity. At least the boxes don't complain, Grex had said when loading her aboard. Zara had wanted to point out that the boxes also didn't pay passage fees, but sarcasm and survival rarely mixed well in her experience. The thing about being the last of your species is that it makes you everybody's problem and nobody's responsibility. The Keth'lynn had been wiped out when their sun decided to go supernova ahead of schedule. Typical. Even their star couldn't stick to a timeline. Zara had been off-world, studying xenobiology at a research station, when she became the sole survivor of an entire civilization. Lucky her. Lucky her. Since then, she'd been passed around the galaxy like a fruitcake nobody wanted but felt too guilty to throw away. The academic Zilthians had kept her for 6 months before deciding she was emotionally disruptive to their scholarly pursuits. Apparently, grief wasn't intellectually stimulating enough. The warrior Kragans had lasted 3 weeks before concluding she was insufficiently aggressive for a proper warrior culture. She'd tried to explain that her people had been pacifist scholars, but the Kragans seemed to think pacifism was a curable disease. The list went on. The ethereal commune had found her too corporeal. The hive mind collective had rejected her for excessive individuality. The crystal beings of Zarth had simply stated she was too squishy, which was probably the most honest rejection she'd received. Station 13, dead ahead, announced Grex over the intercom. Dumping cargo in 30 minutes. Zara sighed and gathered her meager possessions, a data pad with the last digital records of her people, a crystal containing her family's essence patterns, and a tattered translation device that only worked about 60% of the time. Everything else she'd owned had been lost in transit or accidentally recycled or consumed by space moths or whatever excuse the current species felt like using. Station 13 loomed ahead through the porthole, looking like a rusty tin can that someone had kicked around the galaxy a few times. It was one of those bureaucratic waypoints where unwanted beings got shuffled around like paperwork. Perfect. Yeah. As the ship docked, Zara felt that familiar knot in her stomach, time to find out which species would reject her next. At this rate, she was going to run out of galaxy before she ran out of rejections. Welcome to Station 13, she muttered to herself. Population people who don't want to be here, run by people who don't want them here either. The cargo hold doors hissed open, and Captain Grex appeared with all the warmth of a tax audit. Out, he said, pointing toward the docking tube. Your problem now belongs to Station Manager Clonk. May the void have mercy on his soul. And with that touching farewell, Zara grabbed her bag and stepped into what she was sure would be just another chapter in her ongoing saga of cosmic homelessness. Station Manager Clonk was exactly what you'd expect from someone who'd been stuck running a refugee processing station for the past 15 years, 4 arms, 6 eyes, and the emotional range of a broken calculator. His office was a monument to bureaucratic despair, with filing cabinets stacked to the ceiling and forms scattered across every available surface like paper snow. Another one, Clonk muttered, not looking up from his paperwork as Zara entered. Species? Keth'lynn. Never heard of them. Status? Extinct. I'm the last one. Clonk's primary eyes finally focused on her while his secondary eyes kept scanning documents. Oh, wonderful. Another sole survivor. Do you have any idea how much paperwork that generates? Zara had learned not to expect sympathy, but Clonk's casual annoyance still stung. Sorry my entire species died just to inconvenience your filing system. Don't get sarcastic with me, young lady. I've processed 3,000 refugees this cycle, and every single one of them thinks they're special. He grabbed a tablet with one arm while simultaneously stamping forms with another and filing papers with his third. His fourth arm gestured vaguely at a chair that had seen better decades. Sit. Let's see who's willing to take you. The next hour was a masterclass in galactic rejection. Clonk worked his way through his contact list with all the enthusiasm of someone reading tax code. First call went to the Aquatic Confederation. Too terrestrial, came the verdict after a brief consultation. The silicon-based hegemony was next. Carbon-based life forms clash with our aesthetic, their representative declared sniffily. The nomadic tribes of Sector 7 took exactly 30 seconds to decide she was insufficiently nomadic. The peaceful garden worlds rejected her for having aggressive energy signatures. When Zara pointed out that her species had been pacifists, the representative explained that being the sole survivor of genocide created negative vibrational frequencies that would disturb their meditation gardens. Well, excuse me for being traumatized by genocide, Zara said. See? Clonk said, pointing a finger at her. This is exactly the attitude that makes you difficult to place. The merchant guilds found her skill set commercially non-viable. The academic consortium declared her research specialization obsolete due to species extinction. The religious orders of the Seventh Moon decided she was spiritually incompatible with their harmony protocols. By the time Clonk had worked through half his list, his frustration was reaching critical levels. His four arms were moving in increasingly agitated patterns, like an octopus having a nervous breakdown. The Machine Intelligence Collective says you're too biological. The Bioharmony Alliance says you're too artificial because of your translation implants. The Purity Movement won't even consider mixed species integration. And don't get me started on the isolationists, who hung up on me before I finished explaining your situation. Zara slumped in her chair. Let me guess. The warrior clans think I'm too weak, the scholar societies think I'm too unrefined, and the artist communes think I lack creative vision. Actually, the artist communes said you have tragic aesthetic potential, but your grief would clash with their current joyful expression phase. Clonk massaged his temples with two hands while continuing to file papers with the other two. I'm running out of options here. Maybe the scavenger collectives would take you. What's the catch? Indentured servitude for 50 standard years. Will pass. Clonk's tablet chimed with an incoming message. His eyes lit up, which was disturbing given that he had 6 of them. Wait, there's a new delegation requesting refugee intake assessments. They just arrived this morning. Let me guess. Another species that finds me fundamentally incompatible with their way of life? Actually, Clonk said, checking his screen with something that might have been optimism, they're humans. Zara blinked. Humans? Never heard of them. Neither had I until today. Apparently they're new to the galactic community. They've specifically requested to interview refugees that other species have had difficulty placing. So they want the rejects. You say that like it's a bad thing. At this point, being a reject might be your qualification. Clonk was already sending a message. Within minutes, a response came back. They'll see you in conference room 7 in 1 hour. He looked almost cheerful, which was frankly terrifying. Try not to mess this up. I'm running out of filing space for your paperwork. As Zara headed for the door, she couldn't help but wonder what kind of species specifically sought out the galaxy's unwanted refugees. Probably something desperate or naive. She was about to find out which. Conference room 7 looked like every other institutional meeting space in the galaxy: beige walls, uncomfortable chairs, and the lingering smell of recycled air and broken dreams. Zara had been sitting there for exactly 3 minutes when the door slid open and her first humans walked in. The contrast was immediate. Every other species she'd encountered moved with purpose, formality, or barely contained aggression. These two looked like they'd wandered in from a casual lunch, The male was tall with dark hair and an easy smile, wearing what appeared to be a modified military uniform that somehow managed to look both professional and relaxed. The female was shorter, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and wore diplomatic robes that had actually been tailored to fit rather than hanging like ceremonial curtains. Zara Keth'lynn? The male extended his hand in a gesture she didn't recognize. I'm Captain Jake Rodriguez, and this is Diplomat Emma Walsh. Mind if we sit? They waited for her nod before taking seats across from her, which was already weird. Most species just sat wherever they wanted and expected her to adapt. So, Emma said, consulting a tablet that looked remarkably similar to the ones other species used, but somehow friendlier, you're the last of your people. Here it comes, Zara thought. The polite rejection, the careful explanation of incompatibility, the suggestion that she might be happier elsewhere. That's got to suck, Jake said. Zara blinked. Excuse me? Having your entire species wiped out, bouncing around the galaxy getting rejected by everyone. It's got to be incredibly frustrating and lonely. Emma's voice carried genuine sympathy, not the clinical detachment Zara was used to. We're sorry for your loss. You're sorry? Of course we're sorry. Genocide is horrible, and survivors' guilt is real. Anyone who thinks you should just get over it probably hasn't experienced real loss themselves. Jake leaned back in his chair, somehow making the utilitarian furniture look comfortable. Want to tell us about your people? This was not going according to script. Zara found herself actually talking instead of just reciting her standard refugee background summary. She told them about Keth'lynn philosophy, their approach to science through harmony rather than conquest, their art that incorporated mathematical principles with natural beauty. Sounds like they were pretty amazing, Emma said when Zara finished. I'd love to see some of their work sometime. Most of it was destroyed with the homeworld. I have some digital archives, but Zara trailed off, expecting the usual polite disinterest. But nothing beats experiencing culture in person, Jake finished. We get that. Humans have lost plenty of cultures to war, disaster, and time. It's one of our biggest regrets. You've experienced species extinction? Not species, but civilizations, languages, entire ways of life. We've learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. Every perspective lost is a tragedy for everyone. Emma made a note on her tablet. That's actually why we're here. To collect tragic stories? Jake laughed, and it was genuinely warm. To offer people homes. Earth has room, and we've found that refugees bring skills, perspectives, and experiences that make our communities better. Zara felt that familiar defensive wall go up. What's the catch? Catch? Every species has requirements. Genetic compatibility, cultural assimilation, economic productivity, military service, religious conversion. What do humans require? Emma and Jake exchanged a look that seemed to communicate volumes. That you want to be there, Emma said simply. That's it? That's it. We'll help you get settled, learn the local customs if you want to, find work that interests you. But we're not going to try to make you into something you're not. Jake shrugged. We've got people from dozens of different Earth cultures living together. Adding galactic cultures to the mix just seems natural. You don't want me to abandon my heritage? Adopt your belief systems? Prove my usefulness? Your heritage is part of what you bring to the table. As for usefulness, Emma smiled. Zara, you're a xenobiologist who studied dozens of species across the galaxy. Do you have any idea how valuable that knowledge is to a species that just joined the galactic community? You want my knowledge. We want you, Jake corrected. The knowledge comes with the person. We're not trying to extract your brain and discard the rest. Zara sat back, trying to process this. You're offering me citizenship? Just like that? We're offering you a home, Emma said. Citizenship is just paperwork. Home is where people care about you and want you to thrive. For the first time in 3 years, Zara felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. It was terrifying. When do we leave? The human ship New Horizons was nothing like the vessels Zara had traveled on before. Where other species built ships as efficient transport or displays of power, humans had apparently designed theirs for people who actually had to live inside them. Her quarters were small but thoughtfully arranged, with an actual window instead of just a wall screen, adjustable lighting that didn't give her headaches, and furniture that had been designed for comfort rather than intimidation. The bed was soft. She'd almost forgotten beds could be soft. Settling in okay? Jake appeared in her doorway, holding 2 steaming cups. Thought you might like some coffee. It's a human thing. The coffee was bitter and strange and somehow perfect. They sat in her quarters while Jake explained the journey to Earth would take 6 days, giving her time to adjust and ask questions. Can I ask you something? Zara said. Why are humans so different? Different how? Every other species has treated me like a problem to be solved or a burden to be managed. You're treating me like a person. Jake considered this. Maybe it's because we're new to all this. We've only been part of the galactic community for 5 years. Most of our history is just us, dealing with each other. And how did that go? Badly sometimes. We've had wars, genocide, slavery, all the greatest hits of civilization. But we learned something from our mistakes. Which was? That the things that make us different are usually the things that make us stronger. Our best art comes from cultural fusion. Our best science comes from different perspectives working together. Our best communities are the ones where everyone brings something unique to the table. Over the next few days, Emma joined their conversations, sharing stories of Earth's refugee programs. Humans, apparently, had been taking in displaced populations for centuries. After World War II, we took in Holocaust survivors. After the Vietnam War, we welcomed boat people. After every conflict, every disaster, every crisis, there were always humans willing to share their homes with strangers. Emma showed Zara pictures on her tablet, families of different ethnicities sharing meals, communities that blended traditions from across Earth. But those were all humans helping other humans, Zara pointed out. Were they? Jake asked. Emma, show her the picture from the New York Cultural Festival. The image showed thousands of humans in clothing from dozens of different traditions, sharing food, music, and art. The diversity was staggering. 200 years ago, those people would have been from completely different civilizations. Irish refugees fleeing famine, Italian immigrants seeking opportunity, Jewish families escaping persecution, Chinese workers building railways. They were as foreign to each other as you are to us. And now they're all just New Yorkers, Emma said. Different backgrounds, but part of the same community. That's what we're offering you. On the 4th day, Zara shared her crystal containing her family's essence patterns. Jake and Emma listened respectfully as she explained Keth'lynn beliefs about memory and legacy. We could help you build a memorial, Emma suggested. Not to replace what was lost, but to honor it. Let people learn about your culture. You do that. Zara, you're carrying the entire cultural heritage of your species. That's not a burden. That's a treasure, and treasures should be shared, not hidden away. By the 6th day, when Earth appeared in the viewport as a blue-green marble hanging in space, Zara realized something had changed. For the first time in 3 years, she was excited about landing somewhere instead of dreading it. Welcome to Earth, Jake said, joining her at the window. It's beautiful. Wait until you see it up close. We've got mountains, oceans, forests, cities, deserts. Plenty of room for everyone. even refugees. Especially refugees. Emma, tell her about the Statue of Liberty. Emma smiled. It's an old monument with an inscription that reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." It's been our unofficial refugee policy for over 2 centuries. As the ship began its descent toward Earth's surface, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced since leaving the research station 3 years ago: the anticipation of coming home. The Earth Refugee Processing Center looked nothing like Station 13. Instead of sterile bureaucratic efficiency, it resembled a cross between a welcome center and a small-town community hub. There were actual plants growing in the windows, comfortable seating areas, and the revolutionary concept of natural lighting. Director Hassan was waiting for them personally, which was already suspicious. In Zara's experience, administrators didn't greet refugees unless something was seriously wrong. Ms. Keth'lynn, Hassan said, stepping forward with a genuine smile. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Director Hassan. I've been looking forward to meeting you." "You have?" "Of course. We don't often get xenobiologists with your breadth of experience. The research universities are practically fighting over who gets to offer you a position first." This was not computing. They want to hire me. They want to collaborate with you. There's a difference. You're not just an employee, you're a colleague with unique expertise. Hassan gestured for them to follow him through the center. "But first, let's get you oriented." The tour that followed was a revelation. Instead of processing queues and holding areas, Hassan showed her integration facilities that looked like they'd been designed by people who actually cared about refugee well-being. There were language learning centers, cultural orientation spaces, job placement offices, and something called a community kitchen where people from different worlds shared meals and recipes. "Is that a Quarian?" Zara pointed to a tall, crystalline being carefully stirring something in a large pot. "That's Kex. He's been here 8 months and runs the most popular cooking class. Turns out silicon-based beings have a fascinating approach to flavor chemistry." Hassan waved at Kex, who chimed back in harmonic frequencies. "He's teaching our human chefs techniques they never imagined." In the job placement center, Zara met Nara, a former Vrexian military engineer who now designs sustainable housing for human cities. Her rigid warrior training had translated perfectly to construction project management. "The humans don't care that I was bred for combat," Nara explained. "They care that I understand logistics, leadership, and problem-solving under pressure. They found ways to use my skills that I never considered." The Culture Center showcased art, music, and literature from dozens of worlds. A small section was dedicated to extinct civilizations, their memory preserved by survivors who'd found new homes on Earth. "We'd love to add a Keth'lynn exhibit," Hassan said carefully. "Only if you're comfortable with it. No pressure." Zara stared at the memorial displays. Other soul survivors had chosen to share their heritage rather than carry it alone. The exhibits weren't monuments to loss, but celebrations of what had been beautiful about those civilizations. "I think I'd like that," she said quietly. The residential area was the biggest surprise. Instead of standardized housing blocks, refugees were integrated into existing neighborhoods based on their preferences and needs. Aquatic species lived near the waterfront. Those who preferred high altitudes were housed in mountain communities, and social species were placed in bustling urban centers. "Where would I live?" "That depends on what you prefer. We have university communities if you want to be near research facilities, artistic districts if you're interested in cultural work, quiet suburbs if you want space to process everything you've been through." Hassan showed her a map with dozens of options marked. "It's your choice." They ended the tour at an outdoor cafe where Hassan bought her something called ice cream, which was apparently frozen sweetness designed to make people happy. It worked. "I have to ask," Zara said, savoring the cold treat. "Why are you all being so nice to me?" Hassan looked genuinely puzzled. Why wouldn't we be nice to you? Because I'm a refugee. A burden. A problem to be managed. You're a person who survived something terrible and kept going. That takes strength. Hassan gestured around them at the diverse crowd of humans and aliens sharing the space. Every person here has a story. Some fled war, some escaped oppression, some lost everything to disaster. But they're all here now, building new lives and making our communities richer. You really mean that? Zara, 3 years ago you were a xenobiologist studying at a research station. Then you became a refugee. Now you're becoming an Earth resident. Your story isn't ending, it's just starting a new chapter. As they sat in the afternoon sun, watching humans and aliens interact with casual familiarity, Zara realized something profound. She wasn't being tolerated or managed or processed. She was being welcomed. For the first time in 3 years, she felt like she might actually belong somewhere. 6 months later, Zara stood on the observation deck of the new Geneva Research Institute, looking out at the Swiss Alps while her morning coffee grew cold in her hands. The view still amazed her, all those peaks and valleys that had nothing to do with strategic positioning or resource extraction. Humans built things in beautiful places just because beauty mattered to them. Her lab was 3 floors down, where she spent her days working with a team of human xenobiologists who treated her expertise like treasure instead of curiosity. They were currently developing protocols for first contact with newly discovered species, and her experience with 43 different civilizations made her the team's secret weapon. Morning, Zara. Dr. Patricia Kim appeared beside her with her own coffee, a ritual they'd developed over the past few months. Ready for the big day? Today marked the arrival of Earth's newest refugee, a Vorthan named Kelix, whose species had been decimated by a plague. Station manager Clonk had specifically requested that Earth take this case, calling them the galaxy's unofficial refugee experts. As ready as anyone can be for meeting someone who's lost everything, Zara said. You seem to have turned out okay. Zara smiled. That was the thing about humans, they had this talent for casual optimism that somehow didn't feel naive. I had good teachers. The shuttle from Station 13 was landing at the spaceport now. Zara had volunteered to be part of the welcome team, understanding better than anyone what it felt like to step off a transport with nothing but fear and fading hope. An hour later, she stood in the same processing center where she'd arrived 6 months ago, watching a tall, scaled being emerge from customs with the same shell-shocked expression she remembered wearing. Kelix? She stepped forward, extending her hand in the human greeting she'd adopted. I'm Zara Keth'lynn. Welcome to Earth. You're not human. Me? Nope. I'm the last of the Keth'lynn, been here 6 months. I know exactly how you're feeling right now. Something shifted in Kelix's expression. You were a refugee too? Bounced around the galaxy for 3 years before the humans took me in. Best thing that ever happened to me. Zara gestured toward Director Hassan, who was approaching with his usual warm smile. These people are different, Kelix. They don't just give you shelter, they give you home. As Hassan began the orientation process, Zara found herself remembering her first day here. The fear, the suspicion, the certainty that this was just another temporary stop in an endless journey of rejection. She'd been wrong. This wasn't a stop. This was a destination. Later that evening, Zara sat in her apartment overlooking Lake Geneva, working on her contribution to the Keth'lynn cultural exhibit. The crystal containing her family's essence pattern sat on her desk, no longer a burden of solitary memory but a gift she was preparing to share. Her tablet chimed with a message from her research team. They'd received approval for their proposal to establish Earth's first galactic cultural exchange program. Universities across human space would host alien scholars, artists, and refugees, creating a network of cross-species collaboration that would revolutionize both human and galactic civilization. Zara leaned back in her chair and looked out at the stars. Once, those points of light had represented endless wandering, an eternal search for somewhere that would accept her. Now they looked like possibilities, destinations where humans and their allies might spread this crazy idea that differences were strengths rather than problems. Her communicator buzzed with an incoming call from Captain Rodriguez, now commanding Earth's expanding refugee fleet. "Hey Zara, we've got another pickup request from Station 13. 3 more species nobody else wants. You up for another welcome committee?" "Always," she said without hesitation. As she ended the call, Zara realized that somewhere in the past 6 months, she'd stopped thinking of herself as the last Keth'lynn. She was still the keeper of her people's memory, still carried their culture and knowledge, but she was also something new, an Earth resident, a xenobiologist, a friend, a teacher, a colleague. She was home. And the best part, home was big enough for everyone.